Welcome to this session of Benelux Cloud Adventures. My name's Andrew, and today we'll be discussing how Showpad migrated from their legacy data pipeline to a fully cloud-native setup. Their pipeline's processing the changes of thousands of databases and delivering near real-time business insights on company metrics that used to take days to surface. Jeroen is Chief Architect at Showpad, and he's here with us today to explain all of this in more detail. Welcome, Jeroen. Can you tell us a little bit about Showpad?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having us, Andrew. In short, Showpad is a revenue enablement platform that's really designed for modern selling. With our software, sales representatives all over the world are equipped with the right information that they can share with their customers. And on top of that, we give them a coaching and effectiveness component to ensure that they're set up to have the most engaging conversations with their customers.
Okay, and I understand you recently built out a fully cloud-native data lake from what was previously a custom setup, and that's now delivering more business insights and value to your customers. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. At the beginning of the year, we set ourselves the goal to make Showpad more data-driven, and we did this to accelerate our growth, basically. We noticed that by combining data from different sources of the business, we would get much more actionable insights into those processes. So, for example, we combine CRM and product data to enable our customer success managers to get a much better understanding of the health of our customers. That way, they're able to contact those customers much more proactively and make sure that our customers are happy and successful with our products.
Yeah, okay. And how did you go about building this out? What was the approach that you took?
Essentially, the approach was twofold. On one hand, we started off assembling a great team of talented engineers. We knew we needed people with AWS experience, but also with experience in Showpad's current data and technology landscape. The latter was particularly important because we wanted to make sure that we could replace our old pipeline and at the same time work away a lot of this this technical debt that came with that solution. Second point is that we also realized we had no experience building out a modern data pipeline. So we wanted to make sure that we could build out something that would handle our growth and our scale, yet at the same time would be very cost effective. So we got in contact with you guys, we got in contact with AWS, and you guys were extremely helpful in introducing us to what is a modern data landscape.
Okay. I understand there are also some programs that you enrolled in. Can you tell us a little bit about the AWS programs that you took advantage of?
We essentially started off with a simple immersion day to get introduced to a set of data technologies, a set of AWS-specific data technologies. We got exposed to technologies like, you remember this, data migration service, Glue, QuickSight, SageMaker, and that was incredibly useful. None of us really had any experience with those tools, and it helped to crystallize our understanding of the possibilities of those tools and the landscape as a whole and how those tools contributed to that landscape. We then took that a step further a couple of weeks later and made use of the Data Lab program that you guys offer.
Yeah. So maybe for a little bit of background information for our viewers, the AWS Data Lab program is a joint engineering program between AWS and our customer, designed to help accelerate their journey in their analytics project. So it covers everything from your data analytics through to AI ML, as well as business insights and reporting. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with the AWS Data Lab program?
Yeah, I think I just have one word for that, and it was awesome. I can say, we were able to, or what was really awesome about this program is that we were able to take very specific Showpad data and build a pipeline on top of that, together with some of the technologies that we encountered in that previous immersion day. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's more than just what I just explained now. There's actually a lot more value in it. So, for example, for us, it really aligned our team on the problem that we had to solve, especially with the newly assembled team. We wanted to make sure that everyone understood the challenges of Showpad's data model, wanted to make sure that everyone understood the high-level components that would contribute that solution. Second of all, it exposed our team to the technologies that we were going to use to build this data model, this data pipeline, basically. As a newly assembled team, we had little background in data engineering. Most of the technology that we encountered during the program was out of our comfort zone. So the data lab allowed us to get familiar and at the same time understand again the larger landscape of technologies, how they would play with our data model, with our setup, which would be useful for us in building out the pipeline.
Yep.
Thirdly, what's important here is that it laid the foundation for the relationship that we were going to have with Amazon and AWS. So during the 4 days of that data lab program, we really got an understanding of the larger landscape of experts that we would have access to, and it would later down the line significantly lower the barrier for asking questions, reaching out for help, going on meetings together, and those things, and even like sitting here.
Yeah.
And then finally, the last thing that comes to mind here is the general level of enthusiasm that this created, both in the team but also in our broader engineering leadership, to pursue the work that we started off, right? As part of our engagement, we were able to make tons of proofs of concept on things like analytics, machine learning, ETL, and the sheer speed at which we implemented those POCs, the sheer speed at which we delivered them, reinforced the idea of investing in a solid data infrastructure to deliver value down the line.
Great. So it really sounds like that was beneficial for you. If you hadn't made use of the Data Lab program, how would things have been different for you?
Honestly, I think we would have been a lot less cloud native in the solution that we built. We would probably have fallen back to writing a lot of custom components, and as such introducing a lot higher cost of ownership. Today, what you see is that the data pipeline we created is in essence much more configuration than it is code, than it is business logic, basically. And that's something that that's something that we're very happy with, in the sense that we can now focus on differentiating. We can focus on doing the things that our customers prefer instead of having to fiddle with the plumbing and the setting up of everything. So very happy there.
Yeah, awesome. So maybe let's talk a little bit more about the technical solution. If we have a look at the architecture diagram here, can you maybe tell us a little bit about what's going on in the diagram?
So in short, what you see here is the current architecture that we've drawn out. It basically takes data from a set of Aurora MySQL clusters and streams that into S3, and then takes that data, upserts it into Redshift, which on its turn powers our BI solution, it powers our data lake, and so forth.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe starting from the left of the diagram here, can you maybe talk us through a few of the components that we're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see here on the left that we are using Data Migration Service, so DMS for short, to extract data from our Aurora MySQL cluster. We picked DMS for a number of reasons. First reason being that it's pretty much plug and play. We can very easily integrate with a wide variety of database engines without having to put restrictions on our development teams, without having to ask developer teams to develop custom logic and so forth. Secondly, early on, we realized that extracting data from a database is pretty much a commoditized technology. We didn't want to invest in reinventing the wheel again. We rather focus on bringing differentiation for our customers. So DMS offered a solution where it was there, it works, it does its job. Super simple. But the third reason, I think one of the most important reasons for choosing DMS in this use case is one of the problems we wanted to solve is provide high data freshness throughout our pipeline. We wanted to make sure you didn't have to wait days, but could get your business insights in somewhat a real-time fashion. With DMS, we're able to use change data capture to process these changes in a streaming fashion. And that ultimately resulted in, like I mentioned, instead of having days of processing, just having processing for a couple of minutes and being done. So super nice.
Yeah, nice. Okay, you mentioned streaming there, and I can see some streaming components on the architecture diagram. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're using those for?
Yeah, sure. So what you see here on this diagram is that we're using both Kinesis and Kinesis Data Analytics. We're using this combination of services to store data more appropriately on S3, and we're very happy with this. It took a while to get here and to get exactly this combination of components. The particular use case that this solves, which I'll come back to maybe later down this interview, is the fact that Showpad has about 2,000 databases per Aurora cluster, per MySQL cluster. And by using this setup with Kinesis and Kinesis Data Analytics, we're able to change the storage behavior, the default storage behavior that we would otherwise get from DMS, and be more efficient in how we process those files.
Yeah. Okay. And then once you've extracted that all, that's then going into Redshift?
Yes. Before it goes into Redshift, though, we're still processing using Lambdas and Glue. So you can see that here on the diagram as well, is that we are we're basically using a combination of Glue for batch processing, and on the other hand, we're using Lambda for doing the small incremental processing. But yes, after that, we're stitching everything together in Redshift. We're doing this because on one hand, we want to create a version that's optimized for our BI solution. Yet on the other hand, we really wanted to have that low enough latency, that data freshness latency. And yeah, with Redshift, we had the ideal solution for that. And then, yeah, when you look at the rest of the diagram, you see that we're basically connecting to our BI solution. We're offloading that data from Redshift into into S3, which is managed by Lake Formation. So we have that data lake behavior out of the box over there.
Yep.
That in turn connects to Athena or SageMaker, which is particularly used by our data scientists today to get more insights.
Okay. So you've got a lot of components here. How are you managing all of this?
Yeah, I'm very happy that you asked me this question, because it's very important to mention that our entire infrastructure and what you see here on this diagram is deployed and managed by CDK, or a Cloud Development Kit.
Yeah.
It was the first time that our team was using CDK, and we specifically chose to use a TypeScript API. And yeah, I think we made a very good choice there. On one hand, with the TypeScript API, we can use our most favorite IDE, and we can use a programming language that we're familiar with as a company. So it made a lot of sense. The barrier of entry was very low. And especially when it came down to configuring more difficult components like DMS, we were able to do that in a way that minimized the amount of boilerplate, really allowed us to keep things easy to oversee, easy to overview, easy to understand.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for going into that much detail with us, Jeroen. Were there any particular challenges that you faced in trying to implement this?
There were many challenges, in fact, as we were implementing this. Most of those challenges we had a pretty good understanding from, based on our experience with the Data Lab. So the Data Lab gave us already a very good indication that most of our issues would be somewhere around extracting that data from that MySQL cluster. I mentioned the 2,000 database per cluster thing that we have at Showpad.
Yeah.
To be more precise, this actually results in about 250,000 tables that we have to process. And that proved to be particularly challenging with DMS. Again, we anticipated this, but we were still dealing with things like timeouts, high disk I/O, high memory, and so forth.
Yeah. So how did you go about overcoming these challenges?
In this particular use case, what we did is we just divided and conquered. So we took DMS, we split the tasks equally, or we did split it in multiple tasks. So traditionally, what AWS recommends is that you have about 60,000 tables per DMS task. So in total, we had 250,000. We reduced it to between 10 and 20,000 tables. On one hand, to give some more, to allow us to grow. On the other hand, to make sure that everything would run stable and wouldn't burst out of control, so to speak. But we felt that was the the best configuration for us.
Yeah.
And overall, we're very happy with the setup. I think it took a lot of tweaking and tuning to get to this setup. It took a lot of conversations as well with you guys, a bit of back and forward, exchanging ideas. But at the end of the day, for us, it's configuration, so we don't have to maintain something. It works, it's there. Yeah, we're happy with it.
Okay. And I understand there was also some challenges processing the actual output of DMS. Can you tell us a little bit about those challenges and how you got around those?
Yep. So we originally planned to use DMS full load plus CDC to write everything directly to S3. So that would basically create a snapshot and dump all the incremental changes to S3. We would then process that with Glue, but what we saw is that in production, we would easily get to about 1 million files per day on S3. And these would be very, very tiny files, so a couple of kilobytes in size. And this proved to be very hard to process. We would have a lot of network traffic going back and forth. So ultimately, we ended up with a solution that we showed in the diagram before, is this combination of using Kinesis and Kinesis Data Analytics, powered by Flink, to reorganize the way that we process files to the point where we have about 1,000 files per day rather than 1 million files per day.
Okay. You also mentioned Glue. Are you then processing these files using Glue?
Yes. Although, yes and no. It's a bit of a mix, actually. We are still using Glue for some things like batch processing, but we also realized that for some use cases, Glue was a bit overkill for us. You might be aware of the fact of like the cold start penalty that you get with Glue. And yeah, for those use cases, we resorted to just using Lambdas. But that's the great thing about AWS, in my opinion, is we have multiple options to solve a problem. We can pick the one that we're most comfortable with, and that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
For batch processing, we used the Glue. For incremental change processing, we used Lambdas. So that worked very well.
Okay, awesome. What about future enhancements? Do you have anything planned to further improve this or to extend it?
Yeah, this architecture that I presented here, or that we presented here, is just a start. It's the first iteration, right?
Yeah.
So the main challenge right now we have is to democratize access to that data. We want to open this up to our data scientists internally so that they can generate insight to help answer their business questions. And we can do this knowingly with technologies like lake formation, SageMaker, and so forth. We're also obviously looking at adding a lot more data sources. Right now, we're focused mainly on the MySQL cluster, the Aurora cluster use case, but we want to add more logging data. We want to look at our internal technology stack, add data from there, and so forth.
Yeah. Okay. And if you had to do this again, right back from the beginning, is there anything that you would do differently? Anything that you'd change?
Honestly, probably not. And I know this is a bit of an unusual answer, but I must say I'm super proud of how the team has taken up this challenge. I'm also super happy with the space that we got from Showpad and the collaboration we had with Amazon. So we started off from scratch without really knowing anything about about data engineering, about setting up a modern data pipeline. We were able to build this up, discover best practices, and along the way stay a real tight-knit team and improve the foundations for our platform overall. So yeah, I wouldn't have done it differently.
That's great to hear. If you had any advice for other customers that were looking to start through a similar journey, do you have any advice for them?
First of all, I think it's important to work with production data as much as you can. We did this early on, and that meant that from the very beginning, we had a very good understanding of what that production load would be and what the scale issues would be. So very early in the game, we were able to shift gears and adapt and change based on what we would face in real life.
Yeah.
So that was very good. Second of all, what's super important is use that full ecosystem of AWS. Use all these components that you get, all the services that you get. We learned the hard way basically to not just use Glue, but also, for example, use Lambdas to do more simple processing and add that to your pipeline.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, engage with your AWS contacts and engage with you guys. We really benefited from our immersion day in our data lab program, in the sense that for us it was the foundation for our collaboration, and it made it much easier to reach out to you guys and ultimately be here sitting and talking and having this conversation. So that would be my 3 tips.
Great. Well, Jeroen, thanks so much for joining us today and talking about the success of this project at Showpad. And thanks everyone for joining in for this edition of the Benelux Cloud Adventure Series.